Last month, Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer parties filed a motion for judgment on the pleadings, which is a little bit different than their motion for summary judgment. In her opposition to that motion, Blake Lively made an extremely bizarre claim, trying to tie misconduct to California. As we know, the majority of filming and all of that took place in New Jersey, and this stuff at the premiere and all that happened in New York. But in trying to tie alleged misconduct to California, Blake Lively made some interesting choices.
In one of the strangest legal arguments of the year, Blake Lively claims that being told she'd be birthed into a role constitutes sexual harassment. But could this bizarre claim actually destroy her entire case? Wayfarer has just filed a devastating response that exposes not just weak legal arguments, but what appears to be a pattern of twisting innocent statements into something sinister. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. This case is moving fast, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Could this single word choice reveal everything wrong with Lively's lawsuit? Let's find out. The latest filing from Wayfarer and Justin Baldoni pulls no punches. They're responding to Blake Lively's opposition to their motion for judgment on the pleadings, and the central issue is stunning in its absurdity. According to court documents, producer Jamie Heath allegedly remarked that Lively would be birthed into the role of Lily Bloom. In her legal filing, Lively argues this statement sexualized her and invoked female reproductive imagery to describe her professional contributions. She claims it signaled that her value was tied to her gender rather than her talent. Let that sink in for a moment. A figure of speech, a common metaphor about creating something new, is now being framed as sexual harassment. But here's where it gets even more peculiar. This isn't the first time Lively has made such claims. Wayfarer's response points out this is the second time she's taken something involving childbirth or birth-related language and attempted to transform it into something sexual. The pattern raises serious questions about credibility. Wayfarer's legal team wastes no time dismantling this argument. They point out that Heath wasn't even specifically talking about Lively being birthed into the role. The actual statement referenced a successful birthing of the film project itself, a common industry term for bringing a production to life. It's the same way someone might say a company was born or an idea was conceived. Standard creative language. Now pause here for a second. If this were really about protecting free speech, why introduce an argument that limits it instead? If that logic makes sense to you so far, hit like and subscribe because this case only gets more complicated from here. The response filing states plainly that it strains credibility to argue that using the term birthing as a substitute for creating was sexual or harassing in nature. And they're right. This is how people talk about creative projects in every industry.
Most interesting and probably controversial being this statement about being birthed into the role. So here's what Blake Lively said. She said, "Other actions in California set the tone for harassment. Shortly after Miss Lively accepted the role of Lily Bloom, Mr. Heath remarked that Miss Lively would be birthed into the role. A statement that sexualized her and invoked female reproductive imagery to describe her professional contributions. This objectification, made from California, where Mr. Heath resided, signaled that Miss Lively's value was tied to her gender rather than her talent." And honestly, that said a lot less to me about Miss Lively's talent so much as it did about her own self-image. If you're that sensitive about something like that, it's because you already think that about yourself.
Startup is born. A business is birthed. A film comes to life. Nobody thinks twice about it, until now. But the birthing controversy is just the surface. Wayfarer's response reveals something far more damaging to Lively's case. Her entire opposition strategy appears to rely on evidence that wasn't included in her original complaint. Here's the technical breakdown. Wayfarer argues that Lively's opposition hinges on extrinsic evidence, facts and arguments that were submitted in her opposition to a different motion, the summary judgment motion, but were never actually pleaded in her original complaint. In plain terms, she's trying to bring in new information after the fact to save claims that were insufficient from the start. So here's the real question. Does this look like a principled stand or a carefully calculated legal strategy? If you think it's the second, go ahead and like the video and subscribe. You'll want to see how this unfolds. The legal principle is straightforward. When a court reviews a motion for judgment on the pleadings, it can only look at what's in the actual pleadings, the formal complaint, and its attachments. Courts can't consider evidence from discovery or arguments made later in different filings. That's what summary judgment is for. By trying to incorporate evidence from her summary judgment opposition into her response to the motion on the pleadings, Lively is essentially admitting her original complaint was deficient. Wayfarer doesn't mince words. They state that deficiencies in a complaint cannot be retroactively cured by evidence submitted in a summary judgment opposition. You can't fix a broken foundation by adding decorations later. Even if you don't usually comment, consider this quietly. Would this argument carry the same weight if the person making it wasn't famous? If your answer is no, you already know where you stand.
because what that man said was nothing of the sort. And that's assuming she's even relaying that message correctly. But this is the second time, and even the second time, with Jamie Heath being the target of her weird obsession with this kind of thing. This is the second time that she's taken something involving childbirth and babies and tried to make it something sexual. It's creepy, it's weird. I don't know why you would want to put that in writing, but I guess when you control the tabloid headlines and the legacy media, you can get away with a lot more shit.
Lively attempts 3 workarounds. First, she suggests the court should just incorporate all her arguments and evidence from the summary judgment opposition. Second, she asks the court to convert Wayfarer's motion for judgment on the pleadings into a motion for summary judgment, so her evidence would be relevant. Third, she references Rule 15b-2, which allows amendments to conform pleadings to proof. Wayfarer systematically dismantles each attempt. On the first point, they cite legal precedent making clear that a party cannot incorporate arguments from a summary judgment motion into a motion for judgment on the pleadings. It's simply not permitted on conversion. They point out this only happens when the moving party bases their motion on extrinsic evidence. But Wayfarer didn't cite any outside evidence in their motion. They focus solely on legal deficiencies in the complaint itself. Allowing conversion simply because the plaintiff opposed with extrinsic evidence would eliminate the entire distinction between these two types of motions. As for Rule 15b-2, Wayfarer explains this rule only applies when issues have already been litigated with the parties' consent. The issues Lively is trying to raise were never tried or consented to. Moreover, Wayfarer points out something crucial. Blake Lively has never actually moved to amend her pleadings. The motion for judgment on the pleadings was filed back in September, giving her plenty of time to properly seek an amendment. She simply didn't do it. Why does this matter? Because it suggests Lively knows her new facts and arguments wouldn't survive proper scrutiny if Wayfarer had the opportunity to oppose an amendment. Let's rewind for a moment to understand how we got here. Blake Lively filed her lawsuit in December 2024, alleging sexual harassment, retaliation, and a coordinated smear campaign against her during and after the production of It Ends With Us. The film, based on Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel, became a box office success despite behind-the-scenes tensions between Lively and co-star Justin Baldoni, who also directed the film. Lively's complaint focused on alleged misconduct that occurred primarily in New Jersey, where the film was shot, and in New York, where promotional events took place. However, California law, specifically the Fair Employment and Housing Act, provides stronger protections for employees than many other states. This created a strategic problem. How could Lively invoke California law when the alleged misconduct happened elsewhere? Her solution was to try establishing a nexus between California and the defendant's conduct. This is where statements like the birthing comment come in. Lively argues that because Jamie Heath resided in California when he made the statement, it qualifies as California-based harassment that set the tone for everything that followed. There's also the issue of jurisdiction and which laws apply. Most of the key events, the filming, the alleged harassment, the premiere controversies, occurred outside California. Lively herself isn't a California resident. So, invoking California's employment protection laws requires proving a substantial connection between California and the wrongful conduct. The legal concept at play here is called extraterritoriality, essentially, how far a state's laws can reach beyond its borders. California has a well-established presumption against extraterritorial application of its Fair Employment and Housing Act. In simple terms, California employment laws generally don't apply to conduct that happens outside California unless there's a strong connection to the state. Lively attempts to overcome this presumption by pointing to her unexecuted loan-out agreement, which contains a California choice of law provision. She argues this provision somehow overrides the extraterritoriality constraints. Wayfarer's response is blunt. Parties cannot contract around the extraterritorial limitations of California statutes, even if they wanted to. The statute itself contains clear geographical limitations that no private contract can eliminate. To successfully invoke California law, Lively must demonstrate a specific factual nexus between the defendant's California activities and the majority of allegedly discriminatory conduct. Wayfarer argues she has failed to do this. The evidence Lively points to is remarkably thin. Beyond the birthing statement, she references pre-production communications about HR services and Wayfarer's decision not to maintain a full HR department for the film. According to Lively, these decisions, purportedly made in California, set the tone for harassment. Wayfarer's response is devastating. A decision about the scope of HR services, without any link to a motive to promote harassment or avoid liability, is not sufficient to establish a causal connection between California and discriminatory conduct that allegedly occurred on a film set in New Jersey months later. Blake Lively's subpoena campaign yielded nothing. The shell company lawsuit appears to have been a vehicle for obtaining privileged communications. The content creators she targeted weren't part of any conspiracy. They were just people with opinions. Meanwhile, her own choices, the promotional decisions, the brand partnerships, the tone-deaf marketing, created the public backlash she's now trying to blame on others. Justin Baldoni's deposition transcripts are expected to provide even more details about what really happened on set and during the film's promotion. Those documents will reveal whether the tension between him and Lively was a coordinated smear campaign or simply two professionals who disagreed about creative direction. But one thing is already clear. This case isn't about domestic violence or workplace harassment. It's about reputation management, damage control, and the lengths some people will go to avoid accountability. Blake Lively positioned herself as a champion for women's rights and safety. But her legal tactics tell a different story. They reveal someone willing to weaponize the legal system against women who dared to criticize her. Someone who invoked the language of abuse while allegedly abusing legal process. The truth is emerging. And it's not the story the New York Times told. What do you think? Was this a coordinated smear campaign or a celebrity using the legal system to silence critics? Drop your take in the comments below. And if you want to stay updated on every development in this case, subscribe and hit that notification bell. More bombshells are coming, and you won't want to miss them.